Good morning, everyone. Virgo here. It is October 9th, 2019. Hope everybody's having a great work week so far. Today, I'm going to be going over with you an article that was located out of Hays, Kansas from the HaysPost.com website. This actual website printed up an article called Tinfoil Hats and Powdered Wigs Spreading Pseudo-Law Thwarting Courts. Now, what I've noticed is that more and more legal scholars are starting to come out and actually write articles and put information in the law journal pertaining to these specific scams that go on across social media. In 2017, we had an explosion of these pseudo-legal type of scams. The financial scams, for example, that April Lejeune runs still is selling, as a matter of fact. People like Harvey Dent, who like to make claims that are false, and no matter what you show, continue to just push these theories. Secret squirrel accounts and the claim that people's birth certificates are monetized, all these different things. But even more than that, the people that make claims such as you can win court cases by saying specific words, or that you can get out of a ticket even if you don't have a driver's license, insurance, or registration, if you just say these very special words. It's all a bunch of BS. It's all completely wrong. And that is the reason why now a lot of the legal scholars are actually starting to write articles with regards to this, because there was such an explosion of that. So let's get started on this. I think you're going to find this interesting and very telling in terms of what's happening in the legal industry because of these things. All right, so we've entered into a golden age of legal nonsense. It's a problem partly because of a lack of knowledge, but partly just a feeling people have that the courts won't help them and that they're looking for anything to fix that. A lecturer by the name of Colin McRoberts with the University of Kansas School of Business actually wrote this article. McRoberts' article, Tinfoil Hats and Powdered Wigs, Thoughts on Pseudo-Law. I'm going to go over an excerpt of that in just a minute. It's actually found in this month's Washburn Law Journal. The piece probes why a rise in legal scams and frauds is gumming up the court system and harming those gullible enough to be duped. Once again, we are talking about those types of things like the packages that April Lejeune sells, all of the claims that Mr. Dent makes on his Harvey Dent Fact Finder channel, and across social media, it has gone berserk. We're starting to see the social media stuff start to wind down a little bit, and as a result of that, now we are seeing the uptick of a lot of these scholars writing these articles, which are helping. For a long time, we've had weird and unusual, damaging and predatory legal ideas, but for a long time they grew in tiny little communities that communicated by word of mouth or newsletter. Now it's online and everywhere, and now you get much weirder ideas building on top of weird ideas that have always been there. So a Harvard law student, graduated former litigator McRoberts, became immersed in the wacky underground community of pseudo-law when he embarked on a 2016 conspiracy cruise. Now, let me tell you, Conspira-CSEA cruise. This was an actual cruise. And for those of you that followed with me the transcripts of the Winston Shrout case, you will remember that Winston was given permission by the federal court while he was being tried to go ahead and take his vacation while he was out on bond in Mexico. Remember that, you guys? Well, 2016's Conspiracy Cruise is what he was actually doing. This was a cruise that was done by conspiracy theorists for conspiracy theorists, said McRoberts, who joined writers from Popular Mechanics and Jezebel as the other observing skeptics. You spend a couple $1,000, which was crowdfunded by these individuals, and get to listen to a week's worth of people talking about psychic vampires, Hillary Clinton as a shape-shifting alien, secret ways to avoid paying income tax, and all kinds of conspiratorial stuff. The trip also introduced him to the person who claimed to be a professor at the time, Winston Shrout, whose unforgettable name is matched by the unforgettable tales that McRoberts divulges about the man in his article in Tinfoil Hats. He described Shrout as a prolific lecturer and self-declared Earth delegate to the Interdimensional Galactic Roundtable. He is also a felon and currently a fugitive from justice, as we know. This convicted tax dodger capped a week-long excursion on the Pacific Ocean by telling a room full of rapt theorists that he worked with the Queen of the Fairies to move the international dateline from London to France because it would disrupt international transactions. Let me read that again. This convicted tax dodger capped a week-long excursion on the Pacific Ocean by telling a room full of rapt theorists that he worked with the Queen of the Fairies to move the international dateline from London to France because it would disrupt international transactions. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this was the vacation that he took, and he got thousands for it. He took this during the time that he was standing trial for stealing $500,000 away from people already on his crazy seminars. McRoberts said it was bizarre because I'd watch him sell consulting services, DVDs, and books to people on this cruise the entire week. And here was the finale where all the speakers provide their quick high points, and I thought, this is the end of a scam, because these people who are paying to have a private consulting site are now seeing him talk about the Queen of Fairies. How can they go home and keep sending in money? But when I looked around the room, people were nodding and completely agreeing with it. The nature of how and why individuals could be so susceptible to this type of wild misinformation became the real revelation for McRoberts. He equates it to the boiled frog concept, where progressive exposure to distorted reality takes people to places they never would have gone previously. McRoberts reveals that the informational legal term that embodies this skewed subset, replacement law. It's the idea that there is an alternative universe of law, he said, that the universe where my birth certificate makes me a literal vessel, like a ship, instead of a person, and there is a law saying that. There is not. There is not a law saying that. It's the attempt to take that fake universal law and staple it to the real world without ever bothering to find out whether it's true or not. While the tinfoil crowd is unquestionably hilarious on the surface, there is plenty of genuine erosion beneath it. This type of pseudo-law leaves a trail of casualties, and it does. If somebody goes to court for not paying taxes because they fell for pseudo-law, and they defend themselves in the tax fraud charges using pseudo-law, they get hurt, and badly most of the time. And we think of them as the villain in the case, but maybe they were just desperate and fell for some professional guru's sale pitch. Hey, it's happening every single day. We watch it from the Virgo Triad channel like crazy. Yet that person never gets in trouble, he said, which is true. 2 people are spending 20 years collectively in prison right now, and no one ever bothered to touch Harvey Dent. Even though he was the one who started spreading the news that made Randall Keith Bean and Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe start up with even attempting to defraud the government. McRoberts contends that this is because people viewed as goofballs are considered a low priority for law enforcement, and they know that too. In fact, in order for litigation perpetrators will be held accountable, they typically have to stop paying taxes. That's what happened to Shrout. The self-proclaimed Sovsit mailed more than $1 quadrillion in fake international bills of exchange to a bank, claiming the U.S. Treasury would honor them. Instead, the government brought him to trial and sentenced him to 10 years for numerous charges, primarily tax evasion. In March, he neglected to turn himself into authorities and is now a wanted man, which has stopped him from posting his seminars online. The reason pseudo-law has grown to be a problem is that people try it and it fails, but they don't understand why it failed, because the courts never explain it, or because they don't have any access to legal understanding or legal education of any sort. They're told not to listen to lawyers. They're told the judges are against them. So as a result, they don't ever understand why it didn't work. So they only know that it failed, but not why, and they attribute that to the same shadowy conspiracies that have been plaguing them the entire time. The lawyer wonders why, rather than indulging in pseudo-law, they can't simply study actual law. Why don't they take the same classes lawyers and judges take if they want to know so much? And I have yet to find anybody who would even consider taking one of those classes. McRoberts started at KU less than a month ago, but his wife has worked nearly 4 years as a professor in anthropology at the university, and prior to his higher education career, he was a consultant with his own firm, Vasher McRoberts, and with the SAB firm. The Texas native was also a litigator with the Chicago office of Steptoe and Johnson. His academic expertise is in legal persuasion. McRoberts admits sometimes it's tricky to determine what appears more absurd, a tinfoil hat or a powdered wig. He said, quote, "If you give an average person a page of real law and a page of pseudo-law, it's kind of hard to tell the difference, because they can both appear to be ridiculous." All right, guys, let's talk about this for just a second, okay? Let's talk about this for just a second. So we've sat back and we've watched and we've wondered, what is the deal with the actual psychology of this whole thing? Why is it that people are willing to give thousands of dollars to a man who claims that he's talking or communicating or colluding with the Queen of Fairies? And in exchange, expect simple direction that is all completely false to get them out of some legal issue that may be something as simple as a traffic ticket, for example. Or maybe they think that somehow he can teach them how to file an accepted for value presentment properly with the Treasury, even though that doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form in reality. Well, there's a whole psychological setup to all of this, you guys. The psychological setup starts with one thing that everyone finds within themselves. Everyone has it available and readily able to bring it out. Everyone has it because it is of the core, a part of the core primitive basis of human beings, and that is anger. When you watch April do one of her shows, you see her begin to rile up people by talking about being debt slaves, by talking about how ugly the government is, by talking about the fact that they have sold them into slavery, they've sold their children into slavery, they tricked their parents, etc. This is a very common way to gaslight your group. Literally able to turn individuals into virtual cult-like zombies. And we've watched it happen over and over again. This is what's required in order to sell someone something as atrocious as these ridiculous legal theories. This is an excellent read, and there's something that's even better than that, and that is the washburnlaw.edu website journal that has come out. And I'm just going to read you a small little section of this real quick. I think you guys will find this interesting, and I'd like to see you guys actually go on to the digital collection and read the entire thing. I'm not going to do that because this is copywritten, and so I'm only able to actually read a small little section of it. The theme law in a post-truth era implies that law is facing a new intrusion of irrational thinking, but irrationality is an inevitable permanent feature of human systems, including law. The legal community is merely becoming more willing to openly acknowledge it. I have taken this opportunity to call attention to pseudo-law, the phenomenon of individuals and groups who deny that law as we know it exists, a complex ecosystem of pseudo-lawyers such as sophsts, tax deniers, neo-Moors, and many others. Teaches lay people to try to manage their legal affairs with diverse sets of elaborate and fictional rules. This article considers what pseudo-law is, where it comes from, where it does, what it does to us, and what we might be able to do about it. I draw much of my insight on this subject from personal experience, such as a week living among conspiracy theorists on the Conspiracy Cruise, a conference at sea for the kind of legal thinker who claims to be an interdimensional financier working with literal fairies. All right, I'm going to leave it there and let you guys take a look at this for yourself. Both of these links will be in the description of this video. For those of you that happen to be watching this because you actually believe anything that Winston Shrout ever said, keep in mind that the entire legal profession is debunking everything Winston Shrout ever said. And for those of you who have fallen into the scams that Winston runs, that April currently runs, that Harvey Dent has run, that Druana Johnston runs, that a lot of the Moors that are not actual temple Moors are running, you will soon find yourself in the same boat together, in more legal trouble and in more debt than you ever realized before you started listening to these frauds.